Welcome, guys, to the DeVory Darkins Show. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Schumer shutdown. Once again, the president has destroyed him publicly again, calling out his comments. And let's not forget, as a reminder, if you guys saw our announcement, we have the great Tim Pool in studio here. How's it going, Tim?
It's going all right. I'm pretty tired.
Yeah,
to be honest. Yeah,
I know you've been traveling.
Yeah, 2 weeks. So it's rough.
Yeah,
it's rough.
Yeah. But you did the Charlie Kirk show. I saw that.
Really good. And we did this really cool thing where we combined Thought Crime, which was Charlie Kirk and Jack Posobiec's show, with Timcast IRL at the same time. Yeah. And it was fun. It was fun.
That's good. That's good. And also, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, you forgot my name already?
Hey, cut me a break. No, I'm just kidding.
Luke Rudowski, youtube.com/We Are Change, independent journalist for 20 years now. So coming from the beautiful place of Miami, Florida. This headphone is horrible. I'm going to take it off.
No problem.
It doesn't work at all.
It's all good. And let me ask you, so what's your mission now? Because I've seen you've been traveling with Tim for quite some time now.
Yeah, well, me and Tim have been friends since Occupy Wall Street. So we've been kind of in the trenches. We've been at some really crazy, wild places before. Yeah. Riots, civil unrest, refugee camps in Europe. I mean, we did it all back in the day. Yeah. And we've kind of been, doing pretty much the same thing now, doing a lot of online commentary. I like to, make the Overton window a little bit more open, than some people prefer. But I think open conversation is more important than ever, because I think we're at a key critical juncture in our country's future that's going to be very decisive and very important to make right now.
I like it. I love it. Well, I appreciate both of you guys for being in the studio. Guys, if you don't know this, first in-person guest happens to be Temple, so very grateful for that. And for the Rumble team and our team as well. So as I said, government shutdown and this new talk about the Nobel Peace Prize for Trump. So what I want to do is play you a clip from Fox News that happened earlier today where they brought up this idea, and I want to get what you have to say about it, Tim. Okay. Let's play that now.
President Trump could be in Israel himself as soon as this weekend.
I think I'll probably go maybe before the hostages are released or shortly thereafter, pretty much shortly thereafter.
This war has been going on so long, just to put it into context. When Hamas launched their attack on Israel on October 7th, 2 years ago, Joe Biden was here being interviewed by the special counsel Robert Hur about his classified documents case. The world has changed a lot since then. The president has changed. This one is going to get a lot of credit for his part in ending an 8th global conflict since returning to office. And if the Nobel Peace Prize Committee agrees, we will find out tomorrow when they announce this year's Nobel Peace Prize winner.
All right. Well, I guess the question here, Tim, is do you believe the president deserves the Nobel Peace Prize if everything follows through, of course?
Oh, I think he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize just for getting elected, just like Barack Obama did. If the standard for winning the Nobel Peace Prize is just being president, then Trump has certainly gone above and beyond with, for instance, the Abraham Accords and now this Hamas-Israel peace deal. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, Obama bombed a bunch of American citizens and took their lives extrajudiciously as well. So, I mean, the record and history of the Nobel Peace Prize, especially with Kissinger winning it, I think isn't as important as a lot of people make it out to be. I think the record speaks for itself, and we're going to see. I hope this deal lasts. 6 hours ago, there was bombings happening in Gaza, and hopefully those are the last bombings that ever happened in that region. But it's still a very kind of unstable situation from everything I'm assessing.
I heard, and this, I could be wrong, but did you know that Barack Obama has the record for most children killed by a Nobel laureate?
No, I didn't know that, but I'm not shocked by it.
I mean, I think Kissinger takes the cake with what happened in Laos and Cambodia.
Right, but the idea is that Obama was the one who signed off on it and said, go strike these.
Personally, on the individual, he was given a paper saying, do you want to murder and assassinate this specific American 16-year-old citizen? He was like, okay.
So not only was he the deporter in chief, but he was the bomber in chief, I think.
Well, they actually call him Obama.
Yeah, of course they did.
That was one of his names.
They did. Yeah, so let's put this on the screen for everybody, just in case people didn't know this. On this day in 2009, President Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize for what the Norwegian Nobel Committee called, quote, this extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation between peoples. That sounds like a bunch of words, but I don't know what that means. I think that's what you were just saying.
Yeah, I mean, anything. They were just like, oh, wow, hey, Obama, you win.
That's just unfortunate. Unfortunate. Yeah. Okay. So I'm with you. I believe the president definitely deserves it. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that he didn't win the election, but he deserves it from Trump 1.0. If you think about the Abraham Accords, and I don't think he ever really got the credit he deserved on that. And I think it just speaks to what's wrong with the media today. All right. So let's go to this next clip, which happens to be the president speaking about his visit possibly to Israel.
On a much bigger basis, created peace. And I think it's going to be a lasting peace, hopefully an everlasting peace. Peace in the Middle East. We secured the release of all of the remaining hostages, and they should be released on Monday or Tuesday. Getting them is a complicated process. I'd rather not tell you what they have to do to get them. There are places you don't want to be. But we are getting the hostages back on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, and that'll be a day of joy. I'm going to try and make a trip over. We're going to try and get over there, and we're working on the timing, the exact timing. We're going to go to Egypt, where we'll have a signing, an additional signing. We've already had a signing representing me, but we're going to have an official signing. And the amazing thing is all of the countries over there, from Qatar to Saudi Arabia to UAE to all of them, I mean, the rich ones, the less than rich ones, they've all come together, something which is amazing, actually. They've all come together for this, and they're really probably the best relationships they've ever had. So it's been really something incredible that nobody thought it was possible to get it done.
Yeah. I would say the first people on that list who thought this wasn't possible was definitely mainstream media. I'd really love to get your guys' perspective on that, because every single day when I watch these clips and I see what's happening in the Trump administration, CNN, MSDNC, they only have one mission in mind, which is to continue to pump propaganda in the minds of the American people, undermine the president. And even yesterday, I saw this clip from Jake Tapper where he was like, yeah, but is this really a peace deal? So what do you guys say about the hostages and the reporting from mainstream media?
I think the big concern is that Netanyahu seems to continually strike Gaza even after they try to have these peace agreements. And I know the response from the more pro-Israel side is that, yeah, well, Hamas is engaging in terror attacks as well. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how you handle a situation like this when you've got two sides that are at such odds, mm-hmm. right? It's not an easy answer. Man, this is tough. Trump, I think, in and of itself, the work he is doing is some of the best foreign policy I've seen in my lifetime. There are a lot of questions we have over ongoing drone strikes and things of that nature. I can't speak to what Israel, Netanyahu, or Hamas, they are going to do. I can speak as an American to what Trump's efforts are, and he is going above and beyond to get this peace deal. I actually think Trump deep down wants to be the guy historically who ended the conflict in Israel. Mm-hmm. I don't know that he can, though, and it's not his fault, you know?
Yeah, Bibi's the wild card, right? A couple of days ago, Trump tweeted, hey, stop bombing Gaza.
Right.
Bibi didn't stop bombing Gaza, which is a direct front to what Donald Trump told them to do. Right. There's a situation with the Iran war where Donald Trump says, okay, guys, no more bombs. Bibi sent over another bomb. So he's the wild card because his political career and the corruption charges he faces are all kind of involved with these foreign conflicts and these wars. So a lot of people have been saying the longer these wars go on, the more Bibi could stay in power. So that's the wild card. Will Bibi hold up to his end of the deal? Yeah. There was a lot of tough talk. There was a lot of tough negotiations. There was a lot of him pulling back. Can Trump wrangle Bibi is the question.
Yeah. I always tell my people that are watching me every day live is that, listen, I've never been to Israel. I've never been to Gaza, Ukraine, or Russia. So to comment as if I know what these people are going through and how they see the world would be ignorant of me. I have been to Afghanistan, of course, but I tell people all the time, the president can't control Netanyahu in the way that we just initially think he can. And we've seen history of that. I guess my focus, and I want to know what you guys think about this, are the hostages. I think if the hostages can come home, and every single one of them, whether they're dead or alive, doesn't matter, if they can come home, I mean, that right there is a super win. Because I'm not convinced, even if they do reach a peace deal, that it will last for the next 100 years. Because the Middle East has always been in some type of war.
Yeah, I don't think it'll last. Right. It's difficult. But you're correct. I mean, I think that all we can do as Americans is look to what our leader is doing. And whether or not he can actually succeed in solving what largely is viewed as an unsolvable problem may be beyond the scope of what we're capable of doing. So again, I reiterate, Trump's efforts are the best we've seen in my lifetime for any president. And in the end, I hope it results in the U.S. getting back to focusing on its own borders, focusing on, Trump obviously is going after these narco gangs and boats. The fact that we spend so much time thinking about these Middle Eastern quagmires, they call them, or even Ukraine, Russia, is sad. I mean, we've got people here who need help. We've got healthcare issues. We've got economic issues. Trump seems to be wanting to move that focus over. How do we get to that point? Well, there are a lot of questions about foreign policy, and Israel seems to be right now at the forefront. So here we are. Maybe Trump can get that to quiet down once he saves his hostages and maybe gets a peace deal.
Let's say that actually happens, because I really love your insight on this. Do you believe this will help the PR problem that Israel has with America at this point? Because there's no question things have changed.
Yeah, no way. Israel's PR is, it's funny, I questioned this on X and I said, why are they so bad at the PR game? And the response that I got, not from all, but from many of these pro-Israel individuals, exemplified this problem. The response were, because it's not PR, it's survival. And I'm like, okay, you failed, right? The point I'm making is not to diminish the mission or goals of whatever Israel is. It's to point out that in terms of communications of their goals, they are very, very bad at it. And in the United States, the anti-Israel element or the Israel critical element is extremely good at propagandizing, at building followers, and making a living off of being critical of Israel.
Yeah.
If Israel can't get a hold of that, and they can't, and you have these reports where they're giving people $7,000, they really don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, Bibi talking about how he needs to sit down Elon to have a conversation with him after the very egregious kind of aggressive moves made against TikTok and the college universities in America highlight a shutting down of the conversation when the American people want it more than ever. We don't want to be involved in foreign wars. We want to make sure America has its problems fixed, and we have a major one specifically with the economy that needs to be addressed, and us spending more money and destroying our kind of diplomatic will and economic kind of super powerhouse ability through these proxy wars are just idiotic and stupid. So I really do hope that this peace deal lasts. I pray that it lasts for 100 years, but I'm also fearful that the next kind of scenario in that region is going to be another conflict with Iran that the United States would probably be involved in, which I hope we're not, and I hope there's peace, but I think that's what's developing right now.
Okay. Well, I second that. And as a veteran myself, I don't understand why people are so obsessed with what happens in the Middle East to the point where they are rioting, they are assaulting federal officers, even law enforcement is tolerating it, maybe because their hands are tied behind their back. What we've seen on Harvard campus, Columbia, all of this, for a country most of them probably never even been to. They probably don't even have anybody related to who lives there. And I'm with you on, what about the veterans? What about healthcare, like you were saying, Tim?
Right.
Taxes, education.
And then the Fed.
Yeah. That's good luck on that one.
Not really a policy issue for the average American.
Just
but,
end the
but
Federal Reserve.
Understood.
Yeah. IRS too, please.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let me play you guys this clip here. This is Senator John Fetterman, the only guy that makes somewhat sense from the Democrat side.
Do you think the president deserves a Nobel Peace Prize?
Well, I mean, if this sticks, I think the whole point of having a Nobel Peace Prize is for ending wars and promoting peace. And I'm going to make a direct appeal to the president. I hope he chooses to provide the tomahawks to the Ukrainians too, and give them the tools that they need to push back against the Russia. And if he brings the Ukrainian war to its end, I'll be the Democrat leading the committee for his Nobel Prize Peace for ending both of these terrible wars.
Wow. What do you make of Ukraine and Russia? Because we already know the whole Israel situation. He could barely tell them what to do. But what about Ukraine and Russia? What's your perspective on that?
Trump seems to be pushing back. I think, obviously, in his campaign and earlier in his first term, he was trying to find a way to get peace between the two nations, but this would require Ukrainian concessions. I do think Zelensky is a bit obstinate, but understandably, I mean, your country gets invaded, you're not going to just let invade or take it. At the same time, I mean, you can't just throw wave after wave of your own men into the meat grinder expecting to win. So maybe victory, or at least the end of this war, looks like Russia taking the eastern regions of Ukraine, holding onto Crimea. What I think happened in the previous administration, we had talked about this a year and a half ago, is that the foreign policy actions of the Biden administration had created such a contentious spot for the Russians, you could no longer negotiate this. I've got this little bug that won't leave me alone.
Yeah, won't leave you alone.
Won't leave me alone. So what happens, I think, is, Russia controls Crimea. It's their access to the Black Sea. They need to be able to move through the Bosphorus, into the Mediterranean, through the Suez, if they want to sell oil. Ukraine moving to the European Union and to NATO puts that at risk. So what does Russia do? They take Crimea, but the only access they have is the Kherson Bridge, which of course got bombed. And there was an escalation under the Biden administration that I thought was bringing us to a point where, I mean, obviously Russia invaded. There was a period where I genuinely believed that Trump would be able to negotiate an end to that war very quickly. But about a year ago, we were looking at I can't remember the exact moments things that were going on, but there were certain key military moments where we were like, okay, it's gotten to that point where Trump actually now may not be able to reverse this. Putin's going to come in, Trump's going to come in and Putin's going to say to him, you can't offer me enough at this point. We have lost too much and we will not risk losing access to Crimea. Now they're launching this massive draft, the biggest that we've seen in a decade. I'm not convinced that there is a way to negotiate at an end. I do blame largely the previous administration for the invasion itself. But it looks like Trump has also agreed, and he's no longer considering these negotiations. He's actually talking about how Ukraine will actually finish and win this war. And it seems like he's going to go that route. I don't know if I agree or disagree necessarily. It's not the same playbook as Democrats, and it's not a problem he created. But I can say at least the EU is paying for the weapons that are coming in to protect their borders. So, tough spot.
And that isn't said enough.
That is a very stupid comment by Fetterman. Send cruise missiles, you'll get the peace deal. And it's a coordinated effort. We have to understand, Zelensky came out today and said, I'll nominate you for the Peace Prize. Give us cruise missiles, though, and then we'll do it. Right. Get out of here. I mean, what is that going to do? You're going to have American satellite intel tech coming in there, American servicemen that know how to run the cruise missiles, and they're just going to have a Ukrainian next to them. And they're like, okay, Igor, press the button. And I'm like, that somehow is not giving us any kind of liability in this conflict that we've been building and brewing and engineering ever since 2014 with this kind of John McCain, Lindsey Graham color revolution nonsense. There's so many things that could be done to de-escalate the situation, especially when it comes to negotiations and detente. It's a very tough situation. I think a lot of people knew it was not going to be easy. It's not, but I think we need more, economic deals rather than we're going to bomb you even more. Well, they're going to bomb us even more afterwards, and we're on this stupid trajectory where we really need to take a step back and promote peace rather than just saber rattle all the time.
Yeah, it seems like you're going to give somebody the Nobel Peace Prize based on weapons. I mean, that just doesn't pass common sense test. And let me get your guys' thoughts on this. If we go backwards, do you guys think Afghanistan is directly related to Russia and their aggression during that time?
Indirectly, but relatively directly. I mean, it's all it's all a large component of the liberal economic order. The military-industrial complex, whatever you want to call it, or they're two different things, but they operate in a similar fashion. What we're seeing with Ukraine is largely related to the Arab Spring and the Syrian civil war. Now, Afghanistan, of course, plays a role to a certain degree, but that's largely having to do with, in my opinion, I think if you take a look at the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, it was to create a pincer strike on Iran. You're basically surrounding with military bases Iran. And John Bolton, who was very prominent with the neoconservatives in government, and even in the first Trump administration, he had said in the first Trump admin, this time next year we will be celebrating in Tehran. He fully expected there to be a full invasion, ground invasion, and a toppling of their government, which never happened. Now that is largely related to the control of the petrodollar, natural gas and energy, which relates to Syria and the Qatar-Turkey pipeline. But that's about how much it is connected.
Understood. Yeah, it was really my perspective on the withdrawal from Bagram Air Base, because that seems to be like the surface level talking point, because that was such a disaster. That was kind of like the last straw for Putin, and he just pulled the trigger from there.
Well, I don't know if pulling out of Bagram did it. China certainly moved in, and now Trump is talking about going back and taking command of Bagram again. But I think the bigger issue for Putin has less to do with Afghanistan and more to do with Tartus in Syria, which is at risk now, and Sevastopol in Crimea.
Well, bottom line is, folks, when the president is responsible for ending 8 wars, and even people say, well, what wars? Well, because you probably don't pay attention or do any of your research. Point is, he should have already probably received a Nobel Peace Prize, especially if you're comparing him, like you said, Tim, to, what is his name?
Barack Obama.
No, you said Obama.
Barry Obama.
There we go. All right, let's see.
Sotero, really, I think.
All right. Okay, let's go to ABC News, because we know the president hates them, and he has that settlement with them. Let's listen to their reaction to this announcement.
We've heard it again and again from a number of people today, really giving credit to President Trump for getting this deal over the finish line. What are you hearing from your sources with regard to President Trump's role in getting both parties to sign off on at least the first phase of this peace plan?
Well, certainly this is an enormous moment for the world, but also for this administration, a big win for the president, who has been very personally involved in this, Lindsay.
Yeah. Okay. So my last question for you guys on this is, what type of individual, what type of leader do you call it, who's able to negotiate this, even if he wasn't directly involved? He put the people in place to do it. And at the same time, he's handling what's happening in Chicago, Portland, and all these other Democrat-run cities where crime is out of control, and including the economy. Now, if you ask Democrats, he's a leader that is threatening our democracy, etc., all that same stuff. But I want you, because I know you're a history buff on this, where do you think he stands when you're comparing him to other presidents, especially over the past 20 years, just in the first 10 months?
Oh, let me say something to incite emotion in the left as much as I can. Lincoln-esque. Trump is, it's almost like the first time in my lifetime we have a real president. And it is, there is a little bit of sadness to it, in that, why did it have to be Donald Trump, who was the guy who said, okay, I'll solve this problem? The previous presidents that we've had in my lifetime, a handful that I can actually remember, right? George W. Bush is when I'm starting to actually get involved in politics. Barack Obama, of course, Joe Biden, what a disaster. These guys felt detached, and it was a very formulaic presidency. It seemed very fake and plastic. There were many problems that we would talk about that would never go solved. ISIS expanded under Barack Obama's watch. Seemingly, the U.S. government was just helpless against the expansion of these terrorists. Trump gets in and he goes, "You want ISIS gone? Okay," flattens them. He says, "Oh, we're gonna deal with Antifa. Okay, domestic terrorists." Now, to be fair, Trump in his first term missed a lot of this stuff, and I think the issue largely was he thought there was a fair game. He gets elected. He goes and negotiates with the deep state, whatever you want to call it. And he says, look, I'm going to do the things that I want. Let's make it happen. They then say, no, you're a traitor, and we're going to remove you from power. His own people, John Bolton, they turn against him. Then you get Joe Biden in office, and what happens during the Biden administration? They arrested Trump's lawyers. They arrested Trump supporters, 20 plus years for people who weren't even at J6, just for being involved with groups that may have been. Trump gets back in, and I think he's saying the gloves are off. But outside of all of the lawfare politics and weird Civil War stuff, Trump seems to be doing things people ask him to do, which is shocking because we largely expect our politicians to ignore us. So in terms of the past presidents, I can't comment on ones I wasn't alive for. I can certainly say in my lifetime, he's the best.
I'm right there with you. How about you?
I think the record's a lot better than what we had. I'm always kind of a perfectionist, so I'm always like, it could be a little bit better. I mean, I didn't like the bombing of Iran. I thought that was a escalation that definitely weakened negotiations with Ukraine, and I thought that had profound effects on the geopolitical situation of the world. Being like, oh crap, he actually did this. Thank goodness it ended, but there's still a lot of nervousness about it kicking up again, which I am kind of worried about personally. There's a lot of situations also happening off the coast of Venezuela that are a little bit, very aggressive. To me, he ran on no wars at all. And I understand there's going to be tough decisions to make, but it resonated with the American people because for the last few years, ever since 9/11, all we got is war after war after war. And what do we have to show for it? Debt. We have money printing. We have a worsened economy. We have less national security. And the terrorists that we were fighting now have our weapons. So
well, I'm pro-war now. I'm pro-war now because I'm kidding, but
Yeah.
when my whole life is the Middle East and they can't articulate to us what the American interest is there, it's nebulous. It exists, of course. It's what is it, cobalt mining or lithium in in Iraq and Afghanistan, oil and poppy seeds or whatever it is they want.
Seed. Yep.
All that stuff. The one thing I will say is, while I agree with Luke largely that we don't want to enter new wars, there is an argument for Venezuela where there is not an argument for these other countries. Ukraine, what are we doing in Ukraine? Well, he's going to invade Poland. Well, this is a problem for Europe and our European partners. And we can be involved insofar as Article 5 of NATO would have us be. So let's let Europe foot the bill. And that's what Trump has basically done. He said, you guys pay the bill for these weapons. We'll take your money. And so I say, okay, I'd prefer it if there was no war. But if Trump can't negotiate peace between Russia and Ukraine, or because people like Boris Johnson in the UK and other countries are obstructing that, we'll at least pull back and say, you're going to buy the weapons from us. It's going to be more of an arm's length deal. However, when it comes to the issue of Venezuela, they are sending prisoners, gangs, and drugs. Tren de Aragua, of course, is very well known, and a lot of trafficking goes through Venezuela. Venezuela does not like us. They have not liked us for a very, very long time. They are ruled by socialist lunatics. So I will say I don't want war in Venezuela. It is scary to hear that Trump is having conversations about drone strikes in Venezuelan territory. However, again, saying I don't want that, I think it's fair to admit if the interests of the war machine that exists under Trump is secure our borders, stop the drug trafficking, and go after the terrorist groups that operate in these countries, that at least is a real political argument we can discuss and say pros and cons. Is this war something we want to consider? Again, my response is no, but I don't know where you even begin to say we should send brave men and women in uniform to the other side of the planet, to Afghanistan. There's look, the 9/11 argument, the Taliban, all that stuff. Well, bin Laden was in Pakistan. The Iraq arguments, no weapons of mass destruction. We should not be over there. There was no legitimate case for that. So
Yeah.
Well, Venezuela has a lot of oil too, and it would be pretty nice if they were allied with us so they could share some of that oil underneath their rich soil as well. I think that's the real argument at play here. I mean, if we want to stop drug trafficking, enforce the borders, which we are, and you'll stop a lot of the drug traffickers from coming in. But it is a narco state. But there's also a lot of other narco states all over Latin America, Colombia being one of them, Peru being one of them. I mean, there's so many. Brazil. I mean, don't get me started. I think it has a lot more to do with American geopolitical interests.
Yeah. See, the interesting thing about it all is when I was in Afghanistan, everyone was like, why are we actually here?
nation building.
Poppies, human trafficking, and an excuse for the military-industrial complex to rob the American people.
Right.
It was nation building was a big component. Obviously, that's a surface level statement. There's a lot of, as you mentioned, poppy, oil. There's lithium mines. When you look at South Korea, a lot of these neocons thought Afghanistan can be like South Korea. If we occupy it for 50 years, it will westernize. And they grossly overestimated mountainous goat farmers.
Yep.
When you, and I, as a Korean man, am offended that they would dare think such a thing. I'm kidding. I mean, but South Koreans are intelligent, developed culture. To go into an area where there's limited cultural development and then try and force national, it's going to take 100 years of occupation. They couldn't make it work.
Yeah.
And so here we are.
Yeah. And I read somewhere where, well, actually, when I was in the military, they were telling us the history of Afghanistan and how this has been the most invaded country in the history of the world, but has never been conquered. No matter how many times people have tried, they've always been unsuccessful in the end.
Yeah, we should have never been in there. It's I call Ukraine the Afghanistan of Europe. Yeah. There's also a lot of blood there, a lot of history there. If we're going to be arguing for Donald Trump, I think one of the strongest arguments for him is what he did with Pakistan and India. That was a very dangerous situation. He stepped in and actually ended it, which you got to give him props for. Right. And I'm willing to, of course, do that, even as someone who's seen as someone who has TDS.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how about his war on the cartels? Because I know people are already questioning his drone strikes in regards to these cartel drug boats. So what's your guys' take on that? Do you believe constitutionally he's right for doing that?
It's a gray area, interestingly. I mean, typically the president needs some kind of authorization for use of military force, like we had for the Middle East. But there's also this argument that actually the president can give orders to our military when it comes to external threats, international waters, et cetera. So it is interesting. A lot of people are critical of the Trump strikes on these boats because they're like, they're civilians. Well, you had collateral murder. We had seen the previous administration killing people in the Middle East. We don't know why they're doing that.
Right.
They've never justified it. Trump showed us a video of a strike on a speedboat, he says, was narco-terrorists. I would like to see evidence. I would like to see them say, look, we are doing right. But I do give them the benefit of the doubt in doing so. Now, if he wants to escalate it to drone strikes in Venezuela, then you need a declaration of war for Congress, which, to be honest, he's not going to go for. Congress wouldn't give him, and then we're going to have another illegal war.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of them. I think the war on drugs is a scam. And if we're going to be going after the true drug traffickers, it would be the CIA. They have a long history of it. They prop up a lot of the cartels and organizations that have been doing it.
Yeah.
And I mean, just look back to Iran-Contra and what they did with Free Ray Ricky Ross, the real one, with introducing crack cocaine to the general public. There's a long history of that. If we're going to really care about general well-being, we got to get rid of those black markets. Those black markets allow these criminals to thrive, make a lot of money, and make the situation unsafe for everyone. So I have more of a libertarian take on it.
Well, there was a journalist, I believe, Luke, who was in the 90s tracking the CIA and the crack epidemic, but unfortunately he committed suicide by shooting himself twice in the head.
Gary Webb. Yeah, I interviewed his close friends and associates. Yeah, with a shotgun.
Really? What really?
I believe it was a shotgun. Let me double check.
That's even crazier.
Look up Gary Webb, though. This story is wild.
It's true.
Yeah.
Look, there is a reality where, I don't want to be too graphic, but people attempt to take their lives and fail.
Right.
And so they go twice, but nobody believes that's what happened.
Right. Exactly. So the enemy within, as we've heard from the president, might be those three-letter words. I don't want to say it, but.
Well, I think there's a harsh reality that people need to address, and that is, what are you willing to do to win? So, I'll give you, this is a question I've been asking people in the past couple of weeks. It's a real easy one. Who are the good guys in the Civil War?
Who are the good guys in the Civil War? The North?
and it doesn't have to be, you think the North did right, but typically speaking, historically, we view the North as the good guys.
Okay.
And I know that, when you're actually addressing the history, you say there's not good guys or bad guys. There was belligerence in a war, but who did we morally side with? And it's the North.
Right.
And most people don't read the history of Abraham Lincoln suspending habeas corpus throughout Maryland, arresting a third of the Maryland legislature, Sherman's March to the Sea, where they just massacred people, razed farms, destroyed railroads, and scorched earth campaign, ripping the South to shreds. And so you then ask yourself, if they were the good guys, do you support those actions? Abraham Lincoln did a lot of very dark things, but we're happy with the outcome. Now, it's easy to look back and just say, yes, but it ended slavery, and the South was trying to secede. They weren't legally allowed to do that, whatever your opinion may be. And I take a look now at what we've seen from the U.S. intelligence agencies. I largely believe they're corrupted, and incompetent. But the reason I make this example is there will come a time when your morality is questioned as to whether or not you are willing to accept dark and evil things. Maybe evil isn't necessarily the right word, but very dark, destructive things for the betterment of the world as you see it, like we see with Abraham Lincoln and the history of the United States Civil War. So, for instance, Luke and I had this debate on the Epstein files. It is not guaranteed. I'm in favor of the release of whatever files they have. I think the Trump administration has largely botched the conversation.
Of course, but what files exactly? The CIA files, the NSA files, or
the financial records, the full flight logs, and the full testimony without the victims' names in it, naming the individuals that were in there.
But I do have a question for you in this regard. Trump has said it's a hoax. He clearly doesn't want to release the bulk of this. The presumption then one would make is it in some way is bad for Trump's mission and agenda, and we don't know why. Do you trust Trump enough? And more importantly, would you be willing to give him the benefit of the doubt because you want him to win? And so the question for most people who are saying, just release the files, it doesn't matter what, Again, like I said, I lean towards the release because of the failures they've had in PR. At this point, it's just what files you have, release them. I know that judges have been obstructing, and Trump has said we'll release them. But I think it's a fair point to say we are in a very grand conflict politically between two powerful forces, which I would describe as the multicultural democracy of the United States, which is Democrats and liberals, and the constitutional republic, which is Republicans. And in that regard, I want more than anything Trump to win this, because it's not just going to end with Trump. So there is a part of me that recognizes when someone comments saying, no, I don't want Trump to release these files, people call them hypocrites. I say, thinking about it morally, these are people who are just more concerned about what happens to this country if Democrats win again. And they're saying, Trump, I will give you all the leeway you ask.
Yeah, let me just say this. So there's a calculation. I remember I sat down with my family a month ago, and they were like, is there anything you agree with Democrats on? I'm like, not at the moment. There's plenty I disagree with. I know. Go ahead.
Lowering ATM fees.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. There's some things I disagree with Republicans, no question. But if I was going to find something that Democrats are running on or selling at the moment, there's nothing. They only sell chaos at the moment. And I think that is bad for our country, as everybody else does, in my opinion. And I believe independents will continue to see that at this moment. But going back to the Epstein files, listen, anybody with a brain knows that that entire situation was botched from day one. And if you're going to come out and say, hey, we are going to do X, Y, or Z, and you keep saying it 1,000 times and you appear on Fox News 1,000 times, and then what do you think is going to happen? And so I'm with you that either something he knows that if it goes in this way that everybody's asking for, which I do believe files should be obviously made public, but maybe there is something there either, and some people are floating this, he's protecting certain individuals, which is a scenario, or two, like you said, regardless of whatever happens, it's going to compromise our ability to keep Democrats at a certain distance.
Or he's being threatened. I think that's also a likely possibility. But I think just this thing has been handled very poorly, and it doesn't look good for the optics. This issue also will be forced on Trump. MTG was just on CNN talking about how the discharge petition is going to pass. So this issue is going to be a bigger and bigger issue. And that's why as soon as it happened, I was like, Trump, just release all of it, because this is going to create a lot of political damage. This is going to give the Democrats everything that they want. Right. We don't want that. We don't want them having the victory. The political capital is amongst transparency, accountability. Let the chips fall where they may, because I think the consequences of holding these people accountable isn't as severe as the Democrat power grab because of this that will happen.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I like your guys' take on it, because I really didn't see it like that in the beginning, which is there is something in there that he knows of that if it went this way, it's going to give Democrats power again. And so the calculation is, what is worse? That maybe we don't see all the files we really want to see? This is a good question.
It's a grand trolley problem, actually. Yeah. You've got, the concern is, you know, look, I debated this last week, that by not releasing these files, you may be protecting child abusers. Okay. I'm trying to keep the language light, you know, but people who are very, very, very sick. Mm-hmm. The concern then is, you know, we were actually discussing with Michael Malice, do you think that if Democrats come into power, the child abuse will get worse? And the answer is yes. In which case you're faced with a trolley problem that is pull the lever of transparency, and you may run the risk of Democrats exacerbating the child trafficking problem once they come back into power. The way I describe it beyond that is we have seen what Democrats do with power. Mm-hmm. Like I mentioned, they falsely accused Trump of felonies without any underlying crime. They falsely accused him of civil fraud, even though the lenders of his business said he didn't defraud us. He gave us disclosures. It's insane. They arrested his personal lawyers under RICO and charged them. I mean, this is insanity. They created a special law in New York just so one woman could claim that he sexually abused her, whose story makes literally no sense. It's ridiculous. They went after and hunted down people who were at J6 who didn't even riot.
Right.
Who were there after the riot, walked up and were walking around confused. They gave 20 years to people like Joe Biggs and Enrique Tarrio. Enrique Tarrio wasn't even in D.C. I have deep concerns about Democrats getting back in power. I don't want that to happen. Yeah. And that means Trump needs to be given a lot of leeway. But here's where it really comes down to it for me with Thomas Massie and Rokan. I've interviewed them both about this discharge petition, to release what Epstein files they do have. I don't think it's actually even going to happen. First of all, a lot of the files are largely destroyed.
Yeah.
And any sane person knows this. They are actively working on releasing files, or they're lying. But I actually think we've seen an injunction from a judge. Strong probability that if this petition passes and they do say you are here ordered to do so, a judge will intervene on behalf of unnamed individuals and say it can cause damage to their entity or enterprise or whatever, and then we're going to get nothing from it.
Yeah. I think we shouldn't. I think this issue could have been over a long time ago.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're talking about it doesn't look good for Trump.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the longer we keep talking about it, the longer we keep hiding it, it just looks awful.
But it is great that it is still an issue because it was such a niche thing for a while. It was a conspiracy territory. Now it's a common talking point, even among those who like Trump and want him to win.
Yeah. 10 years ago when I was talking about this stuff, they're like, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist. What, you're talking about rich people going to islands?
And then who would have thought in only 10 years you'd be on that island?
Yeah. I did go to the island. I wasn't invited.
You sure?
I did. But I did. It's on YouTube. All right. I have receipts. So.
I'm gonna have to watch that.
Yeah.
I always poke fun. When we're meeting people, I'll be like, "Nice to meet you. This is Luke. By the way, he's been to Epstein Island."
I'm like, not like that. Not like that. Like I was.
after the raid and the arrest, he got on a speedboat and went and started filming and documenting what was going on. Yeah.
Well, there was someone flying a drone, and it looked like Epstein was there. So I was like, I want to go catch Epstein.
Right.
Like that's the biggest story ever. Imagine going on the island, like, oh hey, Epstein, how's it going? Like you're still alive after you allegedly passed away.
Yeah.
So.
For me personally, two things are true. One, whatever justice could be delivered for the victims, let's find ways to make that happen and advocate for it. But let's not advocate for it because you want to bash the president, which is what Democrats are doing, because they had nothing to say over the past 4 years.
Yeah.
But it's also true that he has to play chess with this, because if it results, or if it ends up being that Democrats will gain power as a result of whatever happens, then
but if you look at the Democrats that are involved here, it's like Reid Hoffman, Lex Wexner, right? Bill Gates, major leftist Democratic liberal players, Larry Summers at Harvard, who, by the way, Epstein had his own offices at Harvard, access to all of those kids and students, working on also, now we found out from Mr. Weinstein, on anti-gravity type of technology. Right. So the rabbit hole goes deep with this whole Epstein saga. Yeah. I want to know what in the world was going on here. He was moving over $1 billion. Where did that money go to? Like, we have those records.
Israel.
I don't know. There's a lot of other countries involved here, obviously, too. So,
all right. Yeah. Let me take some time right now and get this message from today's sponsor. You guys can put that on the screen for us, please, Aaron. Thank you so much. Okay, so Venice AI. As you were telling me, Tim, before we started here, how ChatGPT, when you ask it a question, you know it's already lying to you. And
it's amazing.
You have to find 1,000 ways to just get the actual truth, and even that is questionable, right? And so here is the question for people watching. Are there any ChatGPT users out there? Sam Altman, the guy who played a major role in creating ChatGPT, recently announced that it can now reference all your past conversations. So even if you hit archive or delete, they're still saving all that information. I mean, I just think that's crazy. Anyhow, so everything you've told ChatGPT in the past, it's never forgotten, and can access your thoughts, your questions, your dreams, personal information, sensitive questions, whenever it does and whatever it decides to do it. So what can you actually do about it? Well, as you guys can see on the screen, Venice AI prides itself in helping you use AI in a way that is not going to lie to you and is not being controlled, or is going to save your personal information. So for the privacy people out there. But I believe this Venice AI can help you guys do your own research without knowing or having your information saved. And as you guys can see on the screen, they got summarized. You can get, insights and more. But I was testing it out last night. I liked it. I mean, AI is advancing so much. So as soon as you find a tool you like, there's already probably another one that does something else better. But the cool thing about Venice AI is it's not saving your private data. And I know we live in America, so how private can we really be? You know,
it's rough
if you really think about it. But guys, check out Venice AI for yourself. If you don't want your information being saved, you guys can hit that link in the description below. All right, so let's go to, we have some time to get to this next story here, which is about the shutdown. And I really want to get your guys' perspective on this because, as you guys know, it's called the Schumer shutdown. And Democrats are trying to blame Trump and, all this other nonsense and ACA subsidies. And I really want to know what you guys think about that. Let me play this clip. This is an exchange this morning with Hakeem Jeffries and CNBC. Let's play that now.
There was an election, and the Republicans were put in a position where they were able to pass the big, beautiful bill, or you call it the big, ugly bill. To then say, we don't like any of that, so we're going to shut down the government until you take back all the things that you duly passed through legislation. If Republicans had tried to do that to the Inflation Reduction Act or the any of the acts that Biden and that administration had passed, if they said we're going to shut down the government because we don't like any of those things you did, we're going to not pay our military, we're going to, not allow the government to reopen until you do what we want. After an election where the American people put Democrats in power, you'd be going crazy. You'd be going crazy about using a shutdown of the government with a continuing resolution to get what you want just because you don't like what the Republicans did. It's not how it works. It's bad. It's bad precedent, and it's just clear. And you're talking about the House. You've already passed this. The Senate is who we're talking about, and they have a bill which will reopen the government right now with 5 more Democrats.
What is bad precedent is the Republican refusal to engage in bipartisan negotiations. What is bad precedent is the Republicans embarking on a my way or the highway approach from the very beginning of this Congress. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Joe, you're exactly right. So if the government shuts down, they've made the decision to shut the government down. And they can reopen it right now if they chose to.
All right. I talk about this every single day because this guy represents, in my opinion, why so many people love Trump. Because when you hear representatives like that, it's like you're hearing a robot. And we know Republicans control the Senate, okay, the House, the presidency. But how many votes does it take to get the government open? 60. But that's not even my question here. So in regards to the ACA subsidies, okay, how do you guys feel about Obamacare in general and how we got here?
So we'll tell you a story. A couple of years ago, I was feeling a little ill. I was living in South Jersey. This is when we first started. This has got to be 2019. And so I said,
Cherry Hill.
I was in Woodbury.
Okay.
Woodbury area. I reached out to. I looked up the local urgent care, called them and said, I'm feeling sick. I'm having stomach problems. And I'd like to come in. And they said, who's your insurance provider? I gave them the information. They said, I'm sorry, we can't accept that. And I said, that's fine. I can pay in cash. It's no big deal. I said, no, you're actually not allowed to come here. And I said, what? I'll pay in cash, right? No, you're not allowed. And I said, if I was uninsured, could I pay cash? Yes. So I ended up calling a couple different facilities. I'd been traveling all the world, and I was concerned that I had gotten a parasite or something, not to be too gross. But I was like, maybe I should get checked out. Turns out I was fine, and I was just probably paranoid. But I couldn't actually go anywhere, and this is because of the what they said to me. They were like, well, this is ACA. It's created these networks. I'm sorry, you can't even come. And I got really angry. And it's funny because I've always been kind of a liberal guy. I think the ACA is garbage. I think it's fake. I think it was. I mean, the implementation of it was absolute trash, and now it's created a bunch of problems, from people who lost their doctors as one of the principal complaints to prices skyrocketing. And Democrats keep claiming that government is the solution to the problem government created, instead of just saying, how about we back off this one for once? The issue now is they're trying to give people who came into this country illegally and then requested, temporary status, ACA benefits. Now I understand, the Republicans come out and say they want to give illegal immigrants healthcare benefits or healthcare. And the Democrats say that's a lie. No, we're not, because the Democrats are playing a semantic game. What the Republicans are arguing is about 10 to 20 million people entered this country illegally. The Biden administration just patted their hands and said, They're here. They're pending adjudication. So long as they're pending adjudication, they are treated as asylees, and they get health care. Republicans are saying, no, we can't do that. Democrats are saying they're legal immigrants. So clearly we can't have that.
Yeah. And who has to pay for it?
Me?
So, yeah. Us.
Everybody watching.
Yep. Everybody watching. And the fact of the matter is on these subsidies, and you're talking about, this was during, it was 2021, I believe I read that the language in a bill that allowed what you were saying to give them healthcare now in California, where we just moved from. The governor announced how their Medi-Cal, they call it Medi-Cal, but it's Medicaid, is gone bankrupt. They don't have the money because it's been going to these illegal aliens. What do you say, Luke?
I mean, it's pretty atrocious what's happening with our federal government. It is just way too big. I mean, I think the government should be shut down. I want it shut down even more, but I want cuts. I want more cuts associated with it. I want to make sure that everything we're spending money on, we get a full accounting and an ability to be able to vote on it. The government should run on a GoFundMe system for their projects. And I think that's the only role a government should be really playing. Not even that. I don't even want government at setting up their GoFundMes for their pet projects here. I know a lot of people are just trying to blame Schumer for all of this, but I think the government, it spends way too much money, does way too much. And I think right now we should have a very serious conversation about cutting it all down.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say that when the government continues to manufacture problems so they can create more programs, so they can print more money and then tell us that they're solving those problems, you know we have, I'm not joking, but you know we have problems as a country. So let me ask you guys this just quickly. Where do you think this actually ends up?
The shutdown?
No, this Obamacare, this ACA, how long do you think this will continue to drag on? Because it's been a problem especially if depending on who you talk to.
I had a Republican member of Congress from the Freedom Caucus on Timcast IRL, and he told us that when it came down to the vote to repeal Obamacare, they needed one more vote. He was told by party leadership, do not vote to repeal because we want to use this as a wedge issue. So I'm not convinced they actually care. I think the insurance company, these lobbies, are going to keep saying, if you want the money from us for your campaigns, keep it rolling. Because when the government sticks their hands in and creates mandates and restrictions, it benefits the massive monopolies.
All right.
I think the best course of action right now, it's not that I believe a private healthcare system, an absolute private system, is the best system. I think that we have got this, look, we've built up this system that is completely broken. And before we rebuild to something else, we can't just keep gluing things to it. We need to tear it all down, start from scratch, and try and build something that actually works.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe a half private, half government, or 30 public funded. It's like the air traffic controllers right now, because they are not privatized. They're calling out sick. And I mean, how do you stop them from doing that? Especially if they know they're not going to get a paycheck because of the government shutdown. Yeah. So I know you want the government shut down, but how bad do you want it?
I'll sacrifice everything. Let's do it. I'll fly tomorrow. It'll be okay. But I'm more illogical when it comes to that. I'm more hyperbolic, obviously, with my hatred of big government.
Yeah. Yeah. Even at the cost of flights.
Yeah, whatever.
You'll just take a bus, right?
Well, yeah. Yeah, if it wasn't for the government, we would probably already have technology that could be far more efficient and better. But that's my own personal take.
Like internet and Starlink and
depends
things like that, maybe.
Well, the government is the kind of number one enemy of the free market and innovation.
Right.
And I think a lot of the solutions could be done through an entrepreneurial way, without a government incentivized type of structure where they have no reason to provide you a good service at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Really quick, before we close to wrap up here, what's your stance on Elon Musk?
I think he's great. He's kind of a dork. He's a goofy dude. Sorry, Elon, big fan, but you got to call it out where you got to call it out. But he's probably doing the greatest work right now for humanity, which is SpaceX. Yeah. Starlink is fantastic. SpaceX is more important. The rocketry stuff that they're working on, Starship, is the stuff that dreams are made of. It's aspirational for humanity and things that I think can unify, but there's cultural challenges. That being said, while I don't fault him for working on AI, this AI stuff is going to fry the brains of so many people. And Neuralink combined with AI, well, you know, we all shrug because we're like, "Ooh, this sounds evil." But the reality of it is, if we get to the point where you can plug your brain into a Neuralink and then AI generate any reality, liberals are going to plug themselves into the matrix in 2 seconds and conservatives will not. And then conservatives will basically inherit the country.
Wow. So you see that as the outcome.
Well,
That's
put it this way.
interesting.
Someone, you go to a Christian conservative and say, plug this chip into your brain and you can go to another world. And say, no. You go to a liberal and say, you can be a woman. They're going to be like, I'm in.
Right.
It's ma'am.
Yeah. There's a connection between transhumanism and the trans movement as well. And the left overwhelmingly is, trans.
I really do believe there should be a case study on what has happened to Democrats overall. Seriously. Because yeah, go ahead.
It's called behavioral sync.
Yeah.
You familiar with the rat utopia experiment?
No, explain that.
It's an old study. They put a bunch of rats in a big, terrarium, whatever you call it, and then gave them unlimited food and water. And after a certain amount of time, they became homosexual. They started clustering together in one area. They stopped reproducing. They became very aggressive. There was one group that would just sit there grooming themselves all day. They had nothing to fight for. There was no requirement to be strong. And so behavioral sync is what emerged. I think we're experiencing something very similar, but because there are many people, these cities are effectively rat utopias. It's not perfect. There's of course some kind of struggle. Paying rent is not easy, but you have clean running water, just literally wherever you want. You're thirsty, McDonald's will give it to you for free. And the crazy thing is, you can go to McDonald's and say, I want a water, and they will give you a cup. That cup was manufactured by human labor. I don't even care, you can have it. That's how crazy things have gotten in terms of our access to wealth. This has created in urban environments behavioral sync, where they're behaving just like these rats did. However, because outside of these little, rat liberal utopias, conservatives are still dealing with more hardship, they've largely resisted it. We'll see how this plays out, because we don't have the studies to what happened to the rat utopias after they were reintroduced with a dominant population of more aggressive rats.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that how you said that if Christian conservatives were given that option, the only world I'd like to end up in is heaven, of course. But I will say this. It's as if Democrats do not have critical thinking skills, right?
Yep.
That's why I said it's a case study. Like, it's okay to disagree, okay? But they eat it all up, and then when they eat up the propaganda, they emotionally buy into it. And so their behavior becomes erratic. I mean, think about the cycle, think about the mindset of a person who wakes up in the morning. They go down to an ICE detention facility. They get into a fight with an ICE officer, get pepper sprayed, whatever, mace, go back home, wake up and do it again. What type of individual is doing that?
And they don't know why they're doing it.
That's the problem. Because
anybody who's, it's a funny thought I had a long time ago when I was younger. I was like, why are criminals so dumb? Right. I see these stories of guys, they rob a liquor store, and I'm like, you didn't wear a mask? Well, the reality is if they were smart, they wouldn't need to rob a liquor store. They'd make money.
That's true.
So when I look at these guys going and protesting ICE, to what end? What will you screaming right there do? Nothing. Right. Well, if they were smart, they'd actually work on plans to change politics, but they aren't. So this is what you get, violence.
More violence. And that's why we have to continue to show people the truth and encourage them to think for themselves. All right, so we have come to the end. Guys, I want to thank you for joining our live stream today here on Rumble and YouTube. We stream every day, Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Today was special because we had the great Tim Pool here. Luke, thank you. I really appreciate your analysis. I really do. I got to talk to you more often.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I know I didn't remember your name in the beginning. Give me a break. You guys are my first in-person guest, okay? And my producer was like, "Hey, are you freaking out?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not trying to think about that. I'm just trying to think about gratitude." So thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. I really do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
We got to sign the desk or something. We got to do something since we're like first here.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll figure that out. Okay, so guys, if you like the stream, let us know how you felt about it in the comment section below. We showed you Venice.ai. If you want to research AI and get your questions answered without your information being saved, check that out in the description. And I want to say God bless you guys and God bless America. Take care, guys.